Hello, my name is Katie Fortenberry, and I will be presenting on sacred meanings in French Gothic enamelware. Most people have some basic knowledge of the Christian Crusader battle to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control. However, many are not aware that various works of art were inspired by the Christian cause. In fact, there were many crusading pilgrims and organizations that truly believed that it was God's will for crusaders to restore Christian rule over the ancient city of Jerusalem. As a result, there are a variety of artworks that were created to emphasize the divine vocation of the Crusader mission. Based on this concept, I will explore the cultural, political, and sacred nature of the Crusader mission as is found within the Gemellion Hand-Basin, showing the arms of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, referred to as the Gemellion from here on out. The artistic design elements found within this particular Gemellion provides remarkable insight into the French participation in the religious and political battle over the holy city of Jerusalem throughout the 13th century. In order to effectively understand the representational imagery found within the Gemellion, I will first introduce the history of the Crusader mission. From 1095 AD until the early 13th century was a significant period of religious and political warfare between Christian and Islamic states that wrestled over the control of holy sites along the Mediterranean coast. This era successfully unified warring Western European nations against the spreading Islamic faith throughout the Middle East and Eastern Europe. According to Thomas Madden's concise history of the Crusades, this era officially began with the proclamation of the First Crusade by Pope Urban II in 1195 AD and lasted until the eventual fall of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem to the Mamluk Sultanate in 1291 AD. The first Crusaders were essentially weaponized pilgrims from the Latin Church who marched through Europe and converged on the great city of Constantinople before traveling through the Syrian city of Antioch to Jerusalem in order to wrest these sites from Turkish control. Shortly after, in the year 1100 AD, the Second Crusade established what is now known as the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, in which various Latin language-based European countries instituted Christian control over regions bordering the Mediterranean coast. The Second Crusade lasted from the victory of Godfrey Bouillon over the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem's capital, the Kingdom of Acre, until Pope Gregory VIII's call in 1187 for the Third Crusade to restore Christian balance to the Holy Lands. During this period, Crusaders battled Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt, for control of the Middle East, which ultimately failed in 1193 when the famed King Richard Lionheart returned home in defeat. The Fourth Crusade began in 1198, in which the Crusaders sacked the city of Constantinople in April of 1204, defiling various sacred relics, altars, and monasteries. Despite the violence against Constantinople, Crusaders continued to defend the borders of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem from Muslim invaders until the great capital of Acre was eventually conquered by Muslim Mamluks in 1291, thus effectively ending what historians deem to be the Crusader era. Now you may be wondering, where does France play into this? During this period, Western European countries clamored for rulership over the feudal states of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. If a nation had the ability to rule over a Crusader state, this meant that they were a dominating nation in both Europe and the Middle East. In turn, the nation was blessed by the prestige associated with the sacred nature of the Crusades and were highly respected for their role in restoring Christian cosmic balance in the religious world. In the mid-13th century, the sainted French king Louis IX did not hesitate to join the Crusades, determined to ensure that France would be blessed by his participation. King Louis IX himself led France in the 8th and 9th Crusades from 1248 to 1270. Unfortunately, King Louis IX never made it to the great city of Jerusalem, having been captured by the Egyptians after he lost a battle against the Mamluk Sultanate in 1250. However, after he was released from captivity, King Louis was instated as the de facto ruler of the Kingdom of Cyprus, an island within the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. He ended his 4-year reign in the Kingdom of Cyprus in 1254 and returned to France. He took the cross once again in 1267 and later died of disease in 1270 in the Tunisian city of Carthage. The Gemellion was made in Limoges, France, between the years 1250 and 1275, during King Louis IX's Crusader era, as an act of nationalistic pride in France's participation in the Crusades. While the patron of the Gemellion is unknown, it is clear that they were an avid supporter of the Crusades and believed in its sanctity. During this period, a simultaneous cultural and artistic movement swept through France, known today as the Gothic period. As a result, the Gemellion incorporated several Gothic middle-smithing methods called chanlevé enamel, a technique that brought prestige to the French city of Limoges. This method of enameling stamped ground glass powder into raised indentations, giving the object a textured finish, not unlike stained glass windows. Chanlevé enamel frequently function as symbols of diplomacy and social prominence due to the unique technique and expensive use of bright colors. Many Gemellions were frequently donated to various churches, usually with the patron's coat of arms in the center as a statement of religious patronage. These Gemellions came in pairs, often deriving from the Latin word gemellus, which means twin. Our historian Marvin Chauncey Ross argues that these Gemellions were intended for the entrance of a church or a chapel. Visitors would use these Gemellions filled with water to wash their hands, feet, and faces in a self-purification ritual before entering a sacred space. The sacred nature of this particular Gemellion is further emphasized with the incorporation of sacred Christian geometry, which follows the belief of cosmic balance between man and nature. The sacred geometry is incorporated as fractal patterns into architecture, objects, art, and it imbues them with divine energy. The fractal pattern in this particular Gemellion displays a series of 7 overlapping concentric circles called the seed of life, symbolizing the center of creation. The centermost crest within the Gemellion, symbolic for the center of creation, contains a large cross surrounded by a series of smaller crosses. One of the primary symbols emblazoned on the flags that flew over the fortified kingdoms of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem and the crusading pilgrims was the image of a large cross surrounded by 4 smaller crosses. However, upon closer inspection, the crest in the center of the Gemellion displays at least 12 smaller crosses with fragments of other crosses that surround the larger, implying a new perspective. Based on this discovery, I argue that this particular insignia references a sub-organization within the Crusaders called the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar, also known as the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ, were the Order of Solomon's Temple, served as protectors and guides of Crusaders and pilgrims in their journey toward the holy city of Jerusalem. The Knights Templar wore a white cross over their left breast in order to identify themselves as a separate organization from the Red Crusader badge. These knights were essentially military guardians who acted as faithful guides for pilgrims within the holy city. Historians such as Mark Cartwright believe that the Knights Templar still exist today as the Freemasons. More evidence of the Crusader and Knights Templar missions can be found in the 4 roundels surrounding the central crest of the Gemellion. Each roundel depicts 2 soldiers in various stages of battle. The roundels on the right-hand side of the Gemellion depicts 2 knights clashing swords and shields. A knight on the upper right-hand corner appears to have dominated his counterpart, jabbing his sword into his opponent's side, while the lower right corner both combatants appear to be in stalemate. On the lower left section, one knight lacks a sword and shield. However, he remarkably appears to be gaining the upper hand upon the armed combatant. Perhaps the dominating knight boasts of crusader strength. It is possible that each roundel within the Gemellion is designed to tell a narrative of the battle between the 2 faiths. In fact, it would be very easy to read the narrative from the upper left corner and cycle through the right-hand section to the lower left, thus setting the stage for a retelling of the Crusader conquest in the favor of the Knights Templar in the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. Furthermore, in between each roundel are 3 towers with jutting fortress teeth. As a result, I believe that these towers are meant to symbolize the Crusader citadel established in Jerusalem during the late 12th century. This particular citadel housed militias between the First and Ninth Crusades prior to the fall of Acre, and symbolized political and religious authority over the Mediterranean coast. Both the Crusaders and Knights Templar resided within the citadel walls and used the fortress to ward off Muslim invaders. Even after the fall of the Kingdom of Acre in 1291 and the defeat of the Crusades to the Mamluks, scholars Mark Cartwright and Thomas Madden suggest that the Knights Templar remained within the citadel walls until the 14th century. The most famous watchtower within the citadel is the Tower of David, whose ruins remain today. The Tower of David has been built during the reign of Herod the Great, who lived from 73 to 4 BC, and was intended to fortify the northwest corner of the old city of Jerusalem. When the Crusaders took over the ancient site, they believed that the citadel was built over the original Temple of Solomon, an extremely sacred location as the house of God. 2 of the 3 towers were destroyed by the Mamluk Sultanate when they invaded in the 13th century. The inclusion of the architectural towers in between each of the knight roundels may have been an homage to both the sacred Crusader site and their mission for religious and political control. Despite the violent nature of the Crusades, this Gemellion Hand-Basin, showing the arms of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, provides insight into the patriotic pride and the belief that the purpose of the Crusade and the Knights Templar was justified. This only goes to prove that despite its small size, this Gemellion is filled with fascinating imagery. I thus conclude that the fundamental roots of the Gemellion Hand-Basin, showing the arms of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, is a story of faith, history, politics, and a testament to shifting social movements throughout the Middle Ages.